We are recording in progress. Over to you. Ian, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I do. And just because obviously we've got lots of engineers on this call, but obviously other people hopefully will watch the video and understand why it's so important to them. So I've kind of tried to simplify the context before Jason gets into his stuff. So in terms of, not to make me sound ancient, but I've had the privilege of working on and with Google since the last millennium. That sounds really weird. But certainly from early on when they started to dominate search, and even with the growing shift over to mobile via Siri or voice domination from Amazon, our friends over at Google they're still capturing 92% of the entire world's search activity, right? So that's the important thing. That's what's happening outside in the world. And in its simplest form, again, you guys know, but it breaks into really two types of search, from a paid point of view and from an organic or natural point of view. And by that, I just mean the natural behavior that we all that's just how we search for stuff, and then how we click through links that we decide are truly relevant and trusted based on where they fall and what they say. So not the adverts. And that still accounts for the majority of search at something like 53%. Right now, some people in either the business or in the digital industry are still caught up in this idea of if you build it, they will come, right? And you will have heard me talk about that extremely sarcastically. Just because simply the point I'm trying to make is if you build a great website, somehow your business will see a positive result, right? And the ugly truth is it definitely won't, right? Brands' websites simply don't exist on a giant map of the internet unless Google says they do, right? So to make everything worse, there's always been like a race to the top of that first page of results. That's really crucial. Again, we understand that as users, right? We understand that based on our own behavior. But for a business, it's a disaster if that is not done right. You know, the top 5 organic links, they'll capture 70% of the available customers. That's crucial. You drop down to the next 5 and they share the next 4%. So you're dying by the time you've reached that point. And God forbid you end up on page 2, right? You'll get, if you're lucky, 0.5% for your share, right, of available audience. So you're going nowhere. As a business, you are screwed, basically. So that's where this kind of connects to today's session and the stuff that Jason's going to talk about. To get to that top of that list, it's always been about quality, relevance of the content, gaining authority, focusing on links. There's a kind of an endless list of best practice variables. And we're really lucky in this business, some of the people that aren't here today, but we've got experts like Julia, Ollie, Brigitte that focus on that stuff alone, right? But in recent years, in order to help drive revenue, Google's made it far harder to rank. And in order to win in search, it involves more aspects of a site and therefore relies on more skill sets from a digital business, ours, coming together in order to solve that challenge, right? Now, they've been really, really clever about this because this is how their financial model works. This is their ad model. So they're very careful to always put the user first. So the measures have long been mobile friendliness, safe browsing, secure encryption, no intrusive pop-ups, interstitials, no interstitials, you know, and so on. And all stuff that, again, as developers, you understand inside out, right? But those are the things that help a site perform. And therefore, their message certainly to brands and agencies like ours has been really, really simple, which is if you deliver the things that a user demands, then we will reward you with a high ranking and that will make or break your business. So the signals that are customer-focused quality, they're now called Web Vitals, or they've been called Web Vitals for a long time. And Google intends to update those regularly, right? So it's important that we just embrace this way of working in general, because that's how we kind of harness our collective experience in driving and creating the experiences that convert. So together, we've got to solve this movable feast, right? Shifting sands that Google's created. Now, within Web Vitals, there's something called Core Vitals or Core Web Vitals. And I think Jason will touch on some of this stuff, I'm sure. And there are 3 main areas to that. There's something called LCP. Again, most of the people on this call will know what that is, but some of the people watching the video might not. So that's largest contentful paint. And in simple terms, that's the majority of the page appears within 2.5 seconds, right? Then you've got FID, first input delays. This is around interactivity. So again, it's about speed. And it's just that now it's kind of like, how instant is that interactivity? And again, that should happen within 100 milliseconds. That's what good looks like. And then finally, you've got something called CLS, which is cumulative layout shift. That's to do with site movement, visual stability. They measure that on a scale of like 0 to 1, less is better. So 0.1 is considered good, over 2.5 and you're in real trouble. So in order to measure those things and try and gain insight around where you're underperforming, there's a whole bunch of tools that help site performance. Again, as you know, it could be everything from kind of the analysis in Search Console and experience reports right through into Chrome Dev Tools and page speed insights and a whole bunch of other stuff. But one of the coolest ways, or the most accessible ways to do that, is via Lighthouse. So that sets the context of why this is so important, and actually the email that I sent earlier in the week. And with that intro, I'll pass over to the man himself, Mr. Jason Cox.
Cool. Right. Hi. Yeah. So basically, we didn't. I'm working on the Lion Trust project, and Lighthouse was something that I was doing in a previous role, and I just thought it would be quite handy to get something sort of automated that we can sort of build on. So I sort of was looking at Lighthouse, and then I realized that Google actually provide a Lighthouse CI server, which is like a little server that can house Lighthouse reports. Because one of the problems that I had running Lighthouse was you're running it on your machine, and each time it kind of it's a little bit different, and you're like, is that my machine? Was it a latency, or you know, what was it? So it's just trying to make that a bit more consistent. And then one of the other good things about it is that you can actually host it on a server, and then you can kind of let other people see it as well. So what we can do is we can kind of set the server up, which we're going to see in a minute, and then on each sort of commit that we're doing, we can sort of do a report, send the report to the server, and then the client can kind of see that score gradually improving. And we can also use it to identify problems that we need to fix with it as well. So I had a look around. There was a blog somewhere that was talking about doing things with a provider called Heroku, which just kind of lets you sort of build apps and things like that on it. It's pretty cool. They offer like a free version of it. So in a combination of what the blog was saying, it was saying, oh, you can use Lighthouse CI and then host it on Heroku, and then just send your reports over to that all for free. So it seemed pretty cool. So to get it set up, you first of all need to create like a Heroku account, and then you need to get some certain things. So you need to, if you log into Heroku, I'm just going to share my screen here. All good? Yeah. So in Heroku, this is the one that we've got for Lion Trust that's set up here. What you can do on your account is you can just kind of go up to this and then get the this API key. So what that lets us do is that lets us kind of set up Bitbucket to kind of to send things over and to do things on Heroku. So this is one of the variables that we need. And it's all kind of, so when we're talking about the variables, it needs to be set up on your Bitbucket repo, which you can do in here. But you need to have admin access, I think. So you'll need to speak to your admin. So the API key goes in here. And then for the name, so what you want to call it, this is the one that's going to be in the URL. So you just pop it in there. The Lighthouse key we will get to in a minute. The username, so the username is just whoever's username. So I've put it down as mine, but I mean I'll put it down as plain text just so that you can see who it's set up as. So if I get run over by a bus, you can change it to somebody that hasn't been run over by a bus. And then you just need to set up the password. So this is a real basic password. In Bitbucket you can set up like app password. So this just has really basic rights. It can write to Bitbucket pipeline variables. And then this is the username and password that we're going to use. So just to kind of lock it down a little bit, we use basic authentication, which, although is not, amazing, it's better than being completely open. And so this is kind of all done. So going back to the Lighthouse key, this is the thing that kind of lets us send reports over to it. So we don't know what this is kind of at the start, but we'll have a look at the code to see how it runs. So I'm just going to go and have a look at the actual server that we've got. So this is running on Lighthouse. sorry, this is running on Heroku. This is for the Lion Trust one. So we can see that we've got like a bunch of commits that we've been doing, and each time we're merging to develop, we're having a report done. So you can see these are all the different merges that we've done. And then if you wanted to kind of look into the details, you can just click on it, and then you can actually go and open the report. And this kind of gives you the detail on what's kind of going on in the core vitals that Ian mentioned. So you just kind of, yeah, I mean, this can change for each project. I think the idea is that we're going to create a bunch of modules that are kind of, yeah, based on Sitecore that can kind of be slotted in, and then they're going to be kind of shareable. So what you'll be able to do is kind of just take these sort of Lighthouse modules and just plug them in. But that's kind of future work, which we haven't covered off yet. So yeah, so that's the server, and you can kind of do comparisons, and you can see the kind of the score going up and down with this graph that's going to generate here. So it's kind of you generally want to kind of get it up, obviously. So how we kind of configure it. So I set it up this morning as like a separate repo. It didn't take very long at all. So there are a couple of moving parts. So the way that we actually provision it, it's via a Bitbucket pipeline, which is pretty cool. I think you get like 50 minutes free a month or something on the really basic free plan. But I think we get a little bit more on our Sagittarius ones. But all this kind of doing, it's so we have two sort of bits. So this is the bit that does the reporting, sends over the reports, and then this is the bit that kind of provisions it on Heroku. So what it's basically doing is just downloads Heroku. There's a little app that they have, and then it creates the app, and then it's sort of setting it up on Heroku as provisioning SQL servers and PostgreSQL and other bits, and then it's kind of running some scripts and stuff, which we can see in here. So on here, we're just kind of setting up the, we're pushing in. So once we've kind of set up the server, we need to update the Lighthouse token, which we have, which then lets us kind of send the reports over. If you get what I mean. But yeah, so that's all in there. So that's the create. That was quite tricky. It's kind of doing a lot of bits. It's kind of talking to Heroku, talking to Bitbucket, and sort of in between Lighthouse is playing as well. So once we've kind of done a provision, so I actually set up a sample repo, which we can see. Bear with me. Sorry. Which is this one here. So you can kind of see it working over here. So what you would do if you wanted to kind of set it up, so once you take this code over, you could run the pipeline, select the branch, and then create the Lighthouse app. And then we'll run this. So this is going to go and create a Lighthouse app on a different. So this is just kind of showing you how quickly it works when it's not queued. Yeah, that's cool. So, okay, so that'll run for a little while. We're just waiting for like an agent to start. So there was something else. One thing I think I would change is that you can actually run Docker straight into this rather than running it as a Node.js app. So that would be like much quicker. But that would be for next time, I think. Right, let that run for a little while. Any questions so far? Quite Andy, I know you've got a burning question. No?
I can ask one question if you like.
Go on, just for a bit of padding.
Okay, here we go. What?
Just a bit of padding on the, after waiting for this.
Okay, so walk me through everything again. No, not really.
It is so kind of getting it implemented within an existing sort of repo or project. It's quite easy. So what I've done is so I created this branch, this repo. So what you can do is you can just take the folder, drop it in your repo, and then and then just configure all the variables, and then that's it. Away you go. Right, okay, cool. So what that's just done is that's just created a Saggy Lighthouse CI server. So that's kind of running now on Heroku, and that's provisioned it and updated all the variables for what it needs to be. So what we can do now is, so if we have a look at this now, it will be empty. Oh yeah, and I've put a password on it. So that's the password thing that we saw earlier. It is just basic authentication. So you can see there's no data on her at the moment, because we've obviously just provisioned it. So then what we can do is, if we then run another deployment, so this would automatically run normally when we merge to develop, because you can see on here, so it's on a branch. Every time we do a commit, it will run it. You can obviously change it to whatever you want. But yeah, but this is really cool. The Bitbucket pipelines, it's the first time I've used them, and it's just really slick. With the Heroku stuff, it would be pretty easy to move it to something else if you wanted to use a different provider. I know that Google offer a similar service. I'm not sure if Microsoft do, but yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. One thing that I did see as well is when you're doing sort of like flat builds, what you can do is you can sort of, what they were doing is they were running the Lighthouse reports against the flat builds, and then sort of getting the results, so you can actually kind of get the numbers, and then sort of saving them somewhere. So although this is kind of quite nice having it in the on a separate URL, it might be good if we could do some kind of like integration or having a dashboard or something with sort of all of our projects and just sort of seeing all those numbers up there. And I want to get more automation through this because it's awesome.
Yeah, I have a question. You're running report only for one page of the merge, yeah?
So it's actually on multiple. So the way that, well, yeah, I mean, it can be on pretty much whatever you want. So the way I've got this one set up, you have this Lighthouse RC, and then in there you just define what URLs you want to check.
Okay, so we can have the list of URLs, yeah?
Yeah. So the idea is that you have the kind of the most valuable pages on a website in there, I would imagine, and then yeah, you would just run the reports on that. But this is all kind of, I mean, this is configurable. So this is just a sort of a default kind of thing. So yeah, you can sort of run it, I believe, because we're running it. Sorry, I just need to. Yeah, so we could. So this is just running like the basic like Lighthouse CI tool, but you can sort of change it. And I mean, up here, this is just a JavaScript file, so you can pull in those URLs from wherever you want.
Sure.
Which is what we're sort of doing on there on the URL. Right, okay, cool. So this is running Lighthouse. So this actually runs on Docker as well. If you don't know Docker, you should definitely do the Docker. It's totally awesome. And Heroku as well. It's pretty decent for kind of the hosting. I don't know how long you get. I think you get about 700 minutes or something for free, but it goes to sleep when it's not in use. Ah, this is fun. This is why we automate this, because it's boring watching it.
And here's one you prepared earlier, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, I was going to start this off at the start and just say we'll come back to that later, but I didn't. I mean, and so you can actually, so I can show you in here. So on the URL thing, you can see that we've got the 2 different URLs in here. So you can kind of switch in between. There are some really easy sort of and quick wins as well that you can get. Mainly, it's sort of like around the preloading like JavaScript and things like that. And this next gen formats, that's quite a simple thing to do as well. You can see here you've got like these massive, I mean, we've got monster images on there anyway, but if we sort of change them to be WebP or something like that, then yeah, we're going to save quite big there. There are some trickier ones like this one, and I mean that's quite easy, and this one is also quite easy as well. But I think the idea is to kind of create a similar to Helix base, but just sort of like a Sagittarius version, which kind of does all this for you. I think other people contribute as well. If maybe other people that have been working on Lighthouse, if they've got something that's shareable, so we don't all have to write the same thing multiple times. Richard.
Well, I mean, as you know, I've got code, but it won't work on this, which is for H1 testing and meta tag testing, that kind of stuff.
What about the fixes that we did for like the next gen formats and things like that?
Yeah, I mean there's plenty of bits kicking around now. I think you're kind of lucky because you're in a place where, because you're on a new build, it makes it a lot easier to implement this stuff out of the box, whereas trying to retrofit some of this stuff is not going to be easy, especially when it's, as you were just talking about, like things like sprite files, big monolithic image sprite files and stuff like that. To try and retrofit that is a nightmare, but
yeah,
if you're doing it from the get-go, not so bad.
Symbols, eh? So you can see here that we've now generated our report on these 2, and then if we want to kind of look at them, we can just go and look onto this, and then we can see, so these are like the scores that we've got. We obviously don't have a history, but yeah, I mean on here we can do some big changes on like next gen formats. Initial server unused, but yeah, then we got other ones. But yeah, so who do you think would be up for having this in their project?
Everybody should have this in the project.
I say that's a bit of an open question. Everybody.
So
everybody should care about this. It's literally a license to print money as well. In terms of all of our clients, this should be an easy way of getting people to care about performance and care about improvements, progressive improvements on their build quality.
Yeah.
Google have handed us something really useful here, and we should definitely be pushing it every chance we get.
Yeah, there's a certain standard that we need to be up to. All different sites are in all different states of progress or launch or whatever. There's a certain standard that we want to be able to take to market that should be just baked into our promise of experiences that convert. And then to Rich's point, these are live products, these sites. So they want to add new bits to them. They want to add new content. They want new videos. They want new, and every time they do that, they have the ability to make it more complex, less efficient, break their scores, dial down their performance. So it's a brilliant way of constantly working with them in parallel, and maybe selling them more services, who knows, that help keep this score optimum. And then as Google moves the goalposts, they'll help us monetize that as well, because they'll just make it more and more difficult, and we have to do that on behalf of our clients. So.
Yeah, and I think Lighthouse makes it really easy to show the benefit doing Kia here. You've actually got stats to back up what you've changed and what it looked like before and what it looks like after. Yeah. Which doing this previously has always been a bit difficult. Like on WebPO, for example, I've got a whole bunch of test apps now for testing various performance on it, because I needed to be able to show what it looked like before and what it looked like after. So yeah, something like this would just makes that a lot easier.
And I mean, what you can also do as well is you can kind of, so this, I think this is really good at something that we can kind of like show people and sort of that they can kind of look at it at their leisure. But you can even sort of, I was saying to Peace the other day, you could even sort of run this testing into like your pre-commit kind of stuff. So it would just kind of stop you from committing any code that's going to degrade the score any further. Do you think that would be an interesting thing to explore, or do you think that's a bit sort of too much? So kind of preemptively, so getting that if say a dev does something and then it's going to affect the score, instead of waiting further down the line, just sort of nip it in the bud.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, for me, that needs to be factored into that dev engineering process on every process that we do. So my thing, we're not going to wait until it's kind of gone live and say, no, we realize the score is now, degraded by X. It's like, actually, our checks and balances through our peer review and the automation in there that says, actually, that is not even going to make it to a QA, let alone into a UAT environment or to a production for a client. So I mean, shifting that completely downward so that the experience that convert actually happen way before they get out there.
You'll have to find the right way to report on that, because some things will just be little nuances where you've done something in the particular style you thought it was right, you see it doesn't score well, so actually you take a different route because you've got lots of versions that you could attempt, versus something that you've fundamentally done best practice the right way, and all of a sudden it raises a proper red flag and you've got to report on it, because actually the time that you don't know what the other way of doing it is, or you've got to explore new options, or you've got to go and do some research, and we've got to find a way of reporting that to the client and saying, look, this is a stumbling block, we found something new here, and being able to show that to them so that they can almost green light some additional work or a different approach or something. So
So I think what would be good then is maybe not doing it when they're trying to put the code in, but maybe like at PR time or something. So it would sort of, they would make their change, then it would run in the cloud, and then it would run the tests, and then it would just sort of sit there, and then everybody could have a look at it. And then and then as you say, that could then be addressed and talked about.
Is this, Jason, is this something we can set up before we kind of win the dev work almost? Like sometimes we do like health checks, I think, on SEO and stuff on people's like sites before we kind of won a dev project. Could it be used for that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can run it against anything you want. It's all public stuff. So
when we do performance reviews of Sitecore sites, paid reviews, we actually use Pingdom to do the same thing.
Okay.
So Pingdom has the same.
So it's a key. So
it's not identical to this, but it's the same as this.
Luke, on your question, that is a key. It's currently not this, but it's part of pre-sales. In the moment that we're talking to a brand, before we've even won their business, we're trying to tell them what's wrong with their current estate or what's wrong that their existing agency do, because that's part of what nudges them into some kind of relationship. So it's before we've even sold a review, we're trying to kind of say, look, we would naturally do it on search, as I kind of said at the start, in the fact of you're not ranking enough, you've got no authority, people aren't coming, you're losing loads of business. But we don't go down into the granular level of looking at how their total performance is affecting their conversion. It would give us phenomenal confidence, because if we could then come together as a team and say, we could probably up their revenues by 45%, that's a really compelling sales conversation. So yeah, it could feature in a number of places, I think.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, my worry with what you were talking about before, we're doing like the pre-commit. So ordinarily, I'd be like, yeah, definitely do it pre-commit, because then stuff's not going to get into the system that we don't want to get into the system. I
Yeah.
suppose my concern with that would be, is the end product optimized in such a way as to perform well on the core metrics? What I mean is the UX, is the design, and the thing that we're trying to build actually built in that way, which we have no control over, which ultimately means, you know, we may be asked to build something that can never ever perform well on core metrics, due to what it is that we're building. So I think there's definitely an overarching kind of thing that we need to do in all the teams to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's the importance of my words at the start and the email I sent, is this is a collective learning that needs to move forward. If we've got UX practices or design needs for a brand that immediately give you speed challenges, then it's not a matter of not doing them. It's collectively as a team, do we have the expertise to find a way around this, or absolutely is it a deal breaker, and therefore we've got to think differently about layouts. We've got to think differently, and that's a team. You know, in the same, you know, nobody wants to pass a developer a design that makes their life harder or bakes some of these challenges into a solution. Absolutely not. And so all of that advice upstream, the handover, how people get involved, both front-end developers and QA and designers all together, lots of things probably need to not change, but evolve. There needs to be more collaboration in order for us to collectively build experiences that convert. That's why this is such an important session for me.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that actually. So I think that's quite good, because I think with the designers, they normally kind of like design something and then we build it, and then it's only at the very end where we can kind of test it. And I think having the Lighthouse stuff in there, that will kind of let us do the testing much earlier than we currently might be doing. So out of this, I think what I'm going to do is just create a page on the wiki somewhere, with a link to the repo, and just what you have to do to kind of to set it all up. And then if you want to kind of set it up in your projects, it doesn't take very long. Like I set one up in about like 20 minutes or something. Although I wrote it, so it's probably a bit easier for me to do. But the more you do, the easier it's going to be. So does that sound good?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Send it along. I know David at YPO will lose his mind when he sees this. So it's really good stuff.
And I mean, what people can do as well. So with the Heroku stuff, it is kind of free to a point. And then if you want to kind of keep it going for longer, then you can like change the subscription, or we can put it somewhere else. But yeah, it's all kind of like low sort of footprint. It's only a really small footprint. The only kind of expensive bit, well, it doesn't cost anything, but it could be expensive, is like the database, and that's it. But I'd imagine there are free ones online. Sound good? Yay, everybody says yay.
Yay.
Okay, so I'm going to drop off now. That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no worries.
Cracking
Cool.
stuff. Well done, buddy.
Thank you.
Well, for your first ever Hutton hosts.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't prepare for it.
Hang on. Let me stop
the recording. Yeah.